was when he went into a program with Mike Ferry, in my mind, just observing, and learned some things that gave him the ability to just implement and use, that goes with him and Stephanie Ellison was coached by the same guy. Now, Scott isn't still coached by Mike Ferry, but the skill set that he learned, especially as we're going to talk about today, related to that pre-listing conversation and getting a seller to understand the importance of pricing properly to be able to challenge the market is really why I want him to talk to us, and done this at a high level for a very, very long time. I know he doesn't look like he's done this for 30 years, but he really, it's been a long time. So anyway, that is an introduction. Now, I don't know if you guys have the handout, your handout from last time when we looked at the pre-listing script.
Yep.
Did you guys bring it? We had it last time with us. We should take a look at that because Scott will tell you he doesn't go 100% by it, but he uses it as a guide for him as he's going through what he needs to accomplish and use. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we ready? Let's rock.
Okay, just a couple of things just before we get into the actual pre-qualify itself. The most important thing for me is that you need to ask questions of your client prior to meeting with your client for two reasons. One is to gauge their motivation and make sure that they actually want to do this, so you save yourself a lot of time. And the second thing is to give an understanding of as much information as possible in your arsenal so that when you go to the listing presentation, you have your greatest chance of success. So that's the reason to ask it. You know, I used to be really uncomfortable to ask some of these questions because, you know, quite honestly, you're afraid to get the answer maybe.
Mm-hmm.
People say, you know, why would you ask somebody, are they planning on interviewing anybody else for the job of selling their property? Well, if they're going to interview somebody else, believe me, you're not going to give them the idea, in my experience, they're going to interview somebody else. So the key for me then would be to know what's important to them about that, maybe how are they going to differentiate between the two people that they're going to meet, myself and somebody else included. So all it is trying to gather as much information so you can try and be successful, sign up the listing, and obviously give them a reality check if they're not in reality with where pricing is and where the market is for their property. So, any questions on that, or just any questions in general? The other thing that I say is this: you're talking to somebody on the phone 98% of the time when you're doing this. So always have a piece of paper in front of you with your questions. Some people are like, oh, you know, I'm afraid to read. I mean, you're going to learn it, so you'll internalize it, but you should absolutely have it in front of you. You should make notes on it because you will forget halfway during the conversation. You'll forget information. And then you can go back and you can rewrite your notes, and then when you go to the presentation, you can hone in on those things that are you gleaned are really important in terms of what you gathered from those questions. So that's those are just some of the introductory points as far as that goes. So you want me to take you through the presentation?
Yeah, let's just go through the questions,
Okay.
just some of the things you talk about and what it means. Because I told them just some of the wording's a little different than Sandler we've
Yep.
done,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it you'll just adjust as you go. So
Okay. Yeah, and I mix this up a little bit. For me, the most important thing out of all this is trying to understand. I've talked to clients before, and they're like, Scott, you know, we're really not interested in doing anything right now. We're probably going to do it a year from now. Completely changes my whole conversation. Then I'm going to say, you know, that's great. The market is always in a state of flux, as you can imagine. Prices today aren't necessarily going to be prices tomorrow. So as we get closer to that timeline, I'm happy to meet with you guys and give you all the information of what's going on in the market at that time. So, you know, and you kind of navigate that, but it helps you in that instance versus you don't ask any questions, you go out with all this information, you're prepared, and they're like, we have no interest in, we're not going to do this today, Scott. And then you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do all this information? So that's really important, is to understand that. And that's why I asked the question about, you know, if what I say makes sense for you guys and you're comfortable and confident that I can sell your property, are you planning to list with me tomorrow when I see you? And you get one of a couple reactions. Oh, absolutely not. You know, we're going to talk to a number of people, or possibly. So I'll just kind of probe that a little bit, but it helps me to understand where they're at as far as that goes.
do you want me to do a little bit? I'll be the guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I'm going to call into Scott. Okay, I'm going to call in. I'm going to say, Scott, this is Bill Smith, and you know, my wife and I want to know if you can come and talk to us about, you know, selling our house.
Great. Yeah, and we'll pretend we're at the end of that conversation, so we're kind of established that we're gonna have an appointment, and then I'm gonna say, do you have a couple minutes? I've got some questions I wanted to ask you before we meet, that kind of thing.
That's great.
Okay.
Sure. What would you like to ask?
Okay, great. Jeff, just before I come out tomorrow, if what I say makes sense and you guys feel really comfortable and confident that I can get your home sold, are you planning to list with me tomorrow when I see you at 4 o'clock?
Well, actually, we really want to talk to a few different people, so I'm not sure if we'd be willing to list with you or not tomorrow.
Okay, so that makes sense. You're planning on maybe then talking to a couple of other people?
Yeah, when we do something like this, it's a big decision, so we really want to interview 3 different agents.
Okay, fair enough. And, explain to me, how are you gonna go through that process? So, you're gonna talk to a couple of people, myself included. How are you gonna go ahead and make that decision based on what in your mind?
Well, part of it's going to be really just our gut reaction.
Okay.
How do we connect? Do we feel like that we could work well together? And we really want to hear what you have to say about pricing too, and I really want to hear what you have to say, what you're going to charge us, what the commission's going to be.
Okay, so you wanted somebody you're gonna feel comfortable with, and obviously we can talk about price, which is gonna be important to you, and obviously the fee you're gonna pay. Okay, great. Now tell me again, where are you guys moving to? If you sold the property?
Yeah, so what we're looking at right now is, we've been here in Trumbull for 25 years, and we're looking at just downsizing, and I'm at the end of my career, so we're looking at downsizing, possibly moving in one of the senior complexes.
Okay, so locally, you guys are planning on staying local?
Local,
Oh,
yeah.
good for you guys, congratulations. And how soon did you actually want to be into one of those complexes in your own mind?
Well, the one that we're really looking at, we met with a builder in Shelton, and they've got a bunch of new homes that are going, and we were really thinking about possibly putting a deposit on one. And it just depends on how all this works, but they're telling us we could be in one in 90 days, or if we want to take longer and start from scratch, it'd be 180 days, they said.
Okay, great, well, that's exciting, good for you guys. And we can talk a little bit further about that process, just in case you have questions about if you have to sell before you actually buy over there. We can talk a little bit more about that at another time, just the same. Okay, now when I see it, how much did you want to list your home for realistically?
Well, we're really not sure, that's why we're asking you and a couple others to come out, just so we get a sense of, what you're thinking the price should be.
Okay, and as you know, I'm in the real estate market every single day, and I study homes and prices, so therefore I'm gonna assume, Jeff, that you would go ahead and list with me at a price that will cause your home to sell, correct?
So what does that actually mean? What do you mean by cause it to sell?
So that it would be at where market value is for your property, so that obviously the market would absorb that and you'd be able to move on with your property.
I would hope so, but I don't know what price you're telling me, so, it certainly makes sense we'd want to do that, but I don't know what that price is, so.
Okay, and in your own mind, is there a price that you wouldn't go below? When you've talked to your wife in terms of your scenario?
I wouldn't go below what we think it's worth, so, but I'm not really sure until we look at all the data.
Okay, that's fair enough. I look forward to going through that with you. Now, how much do you currently owe on the property?
Right now, I think in our last payment, we're down to $79,200.
Wow, that's great. So you got a lot of equity in the property. Good for you guys. And have you ever thought about selling it yourself, Jeff?
Well, I haven't thought about a lot, but I've talked to a couple of people who have told me that, that there's a new program out through Zillow, and I haven't really explored it, but I hear that there is a new program to sell through them, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, but nothing sounds like you've really seriously considered, but something you've heard about.
Correct.
Okay, great. And can you just give me a description of your house, just a general description before I come out?
Yeah, so right now it's a 9-room, 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath colonial. It's we've got a 2-car garage. We've got acre of land. We've got a deck off the back. That's really it. I think it's 2,800 square feet, the town says.
Okay, sounds really nice. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute best, how would you grade your house overall?
Don't tell my wife that I said this, but I think it's probably an 8+, she'll think it's a 9+.
Okay, and what would